So we'll call on today's panelist on the stage. We have Pramod Reddy, Head Cloud Security and IMS Competencies, Sonata Software, Santosh Tota, CEO, Feltoso, and Udbhav Tiwari, Policy Officer, CIS. We welcome you on the stage. And today our moderator for privacy imperatives in technology and data centric. Okay, we have Srinivas, VP and Head Global Privacy and Data Protection, Infosys Limited.
Is keeping us running for the time. So we'll proceed without any. I'll not sit there. Let me complete this. I'm not sure whether remote will work. I don't want any further. We'll have questions in the session, but before that, I thought it's good for us to. Yeah. So I think I'll leave this slide business and. No problem, not with that. This is already there. No? So before we go for this session, so that's where the focus is here, and it's important for us to know when we talk of privacy that data privacy is not about secrecy, it is not about confidentiality, which are all parts of data privacy, but most important thing is it's about giving freedom and choice to the individual on how their data will be processed, who is going to use that, in what way it will be used, how long it will be retained, and many other aspects of that. So it's purely about giving choice. One person feels that privacy is violated, another perfectly all right. No? So it all depends on the context. So no law, no regulation, no standard actually tells what is the right thing for an individual. So it's not about government or somebody coming and saying this is what your privacy requirement should be. It's more about you saying that what is right for you within the scope of certain boundaries, which is due to national security and many other aspects, freedom of expression and all those other priority rights. So it's also about giving rights to people about accessing their data, being able to correct it, revoking the consent. Even GDPR brought in things like in the previous session maybe it was covered on right to portability, which is a little alien here. We were not talking about it, and many feel it's not part of data privacy. It's about getting it deleted, which comes from right to be forgotten. It's about giving you access to grievance redressal and complaint handling, compensation, and all that stuff which comes in. What is not privacy? So there's a lot of confusion about the fact that people think that in the industry that if you take a consent from a person about collecting data and processing data, then you don't need to do anything else, which is a big myth. Consent is just one of the derogations available for data privacy. The basis, every data collected by an organization has to have basis, and the basis could be several of them. There are about 3-4 of them. One of them happens to be consent. So consent itself is not a silver bullet solution for everything. There are a lot of things. Most important of them is accountability by the organization to see that data is handled properly, and anytime it's answerable. Consent cannot be used in excuse. Consent is a mere contract, and just like as per Contract Act, contract under certain circumstances is not valid. Similarly, privacy consent also doesn't become valid. Many people feel that it's same as security. I think this question keeps coming even in GDPR sessions. I see that if you do 27001, you are almost there. Did you hear? You keep hearing in these organizations. I keep hearing in the conferences that I'm 27,000 certified. Do I have to do anything else? So it is no way enough. It is one of the requirements, because security happens to be one of the 7 to 8 requirements of privacy. It's important to handle that. And 27001 is the good standard which gives you the reasonable measures to have a framework and all that. But the other principles, there is no standard. I think in the previous session also it came up, if there's a data privacy standard, I think you mentioned about the data privacy standard, and we have one already which is not very widely used called BS 10012, and 27552 is under construction. It will take time, much longer than GDPR's May 2018. So today we don't have any standard, but we are coming up with one in India, by the way, on data privacy standard. Some of us are part of it, and that standard may be able to help in setting a standard of what is the right thing and what. It's not related to any particular regulation, but it does help. So definitely security and privacy are two different things. They have a commonality. If you draw a Venn diagram, there will be an intersection. There's also a myth that it is about secrecy. Those who want privacy, they want to hide things. They don't want to government to know things, so they want to escape the government, and therefore they want privacy. They want to use privacy to hide their income, or maybe to hide their secret wealth and things like that, which is totally absurd. Secrecy is about not disclosing what is required to be disclosed to the government and maybe others. Privacy is about what should not be disclosed because it doesn't need to be disclosed. There's nobody, no organization or government has any business to get into your bedroom or get into your financial transactions of what your bank account, bank balance is. Only to the extent that are you paying income tax, are you doing any crime, are you doing an offense, to that extent it is applicable. So, secrecy and privacy should be separated, and in our minds it should be very clearly there and should not be bought as an argument. It is not applicable in Indian scenario. Another argument keeps coming because this is a European concept. Indians don't need privacy, which is again a flawed concept. All of us need privacy. Next couple of slides, when you see, you will realize that privacy is absolutely important for all of us every day since hundreds of years, not now. It's just that we don't realize how important it is in our life. And we are ignorant, and therefore we feel that everything around is all overhyped, that privacy is all nonsense, it doesn't exist. Only sensitive data need to be protected. No, it is not correct. Any PII, which is important for us, telephone number, date of birth also is very important. How? Why? We will see that. It is not relevant for government bodies. No, it is very much relevant to government bodies. Government organizations, including police, everybody has to be liable when it comes to data privacy. They have rights, of course, they have to stop offenses and crime, but there's a limit on to what extent and when they can exercise those powers. As you know, Section 66A was scrapped because of what happened a few years ago. So, in any country, the data privacy law has to take precedence, and this is a balance between what government needs to do and where the line has to be drawn. Therefore, it's very relevant that currently there is a debate going on, and the Supreme Court is supposed to announce that how privacy is a fundamental right or is absolute right or whatever those terms are, but we do require a data protection law which applies to all kinds of bodies, just to make sure that things are privacy compliant, not to stop anything. Nothing which is important for the government agenda should be stopped, but there has to be balance. That balance needs to be understood. So, this is clear what is allowed and what is not, right. Privacy in the digital world. In the digitally connected world, almost everything about you can be known and tracked. What you do every day, whom you meet, what you converse, your transactions, your speeches, your recordings, which places you visit, who your friends are, and even what you think and like, what you have in your mind, what you are likely to engage in, can also be known because often we use Google search. If you are interested to buy a house, we do Google search. We wanted to marry, we look at proposals, whatever. We use internet extensively, and when we do that, unknowingly or knowingly, we leave our digital footprints, which are accessible to many companies, which use it for benefit of them and you both. So, there's a partly you also get benefited in this ecosystem, but where is the line to be drawn? To what extent you permit them to use and all, when you can stop them from using, all that should be in your control, not in the control of any particular company or government. That's where the important thing to know. So, if you see this carefully, all these things which you're reading here now, you definitely want to be protected. You don't want a bug in your bedroom which records what you are doing and what you're talking to your spouse, right? What your plans are and all. Similarly, you don't want to somebody to know, your employer probably to know that yesterday you went to a pub, today you went to a classical music show, or you went to some movie, a kind of movie which normally companies think that if you watch that, then you must be a criminal. So, if somebody knows all these things, they can draw a profile of yours and start interpreting, inferencing about you, which itself is dangerous. So, we don't want us to be inferred and concluded. Therefore, in the digital world, this is very easy. In the good old days when it was paper-based world, it was prohibitively expensive to cull all this information together at a small interval of time. Today, it is very, very rapidly it can be done, and therefore, we have it is commercially extremely viable. Not just viable, it is profitable to exploit data and use it. So, therefore, it is becoming concerning. The concern was not there 20, 30 years ago. We were never heard of this term called privacy, right. So, who is the interested party? We are talking about that somebody is going to take and track you. Who are the interested parties? We should know who is the enemy we are talking about here. If not regulated by law, who has interest? Who are these enemies? Retailers, could be any company, any B2C e-commerce company, which helps them to do targeted advertising, which is good for them, sometimes good for you, many times probably good for you, but you have to decide when you don't want to be bothered. I already bought a house or I bought a fridge, I don't want to be bothered by fridge advertisements for next 10 years maybe. So I want to have the right to stop, not somebody bothering me every time. Employers, to know better who is likely to perform, quit. Imagine your organization can read what you are visiting, what emails you are sending. What will happen? They know that you are about to apply for a job. They know about your interests, when you are likely to quit, or your habits outside the work, which can lead to your bad performance at work, and therefore they start concluding, which is not right. None of us like that. Hackers, this we don't need to elaborate. Hackers make money. This enough we talk about in cyber security. Government body also. Government wants to intrude. Government may not like to intrude. It is not intentionally, but there will be two flaws. One is that government can make policies which will be draconian for many of us, which will become problematic when we want to stay away from it. Not for necessity of the public, but sometimes intrusive. And also there could be some people in the government, certain people who may misuse the data. And then you may say that we will throw them, we will fire them, but you know how it happens. Therefore, many people feel that government should not collect excessive data. Most countries, government is not allowed to collect more data. In fact, in US, if you are to collect social security number, for example, government has to show you a paper which says that you have to give SSN. Otherwise, you can refuse to give the social security number because it will reveal your identity, what you are doing. So there are strict laws, particularly on the government, on data privacy, which is totally absent in our country, which we feel that it should come. I hope it comes. Insurance company, imagine insurance company knows your eating habits, your driving habits, and it denies you insurance or increases the premium. Would you like it? Today it can do that. If you are careless, you don't care where the data is going and what is this privacy policy and what is this concept of privacy, alien thing called privacy, then soon you will have insurance being denied. Would you like that? So these are some of the things you should think. Why is data privacy important? It's important to know why it is impacting us. One, identity theft, because your telephone number, date of birth can become serious issue because people can reset the password, all this stuff. People profiling by agencies can profile you and then use it for various reasons. Discrimination, for example, in recruitment, if I know that you are from Bihar or Bengal or Orissa or Andhra, wherever, then you say that, okay, I don't like these state people or I like these kinds. So all those things, biases can come. So, or religion, race, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, race, we don't want to ask questions which are irrelevant for the job. When I am recruiting a person, I am supposed to be bothered for his or her suitability to the job, not about all other matters. All other matters influence my decision, which is not right. Therefore, many countries have this thing that you don't collect, and we have, for example, in my company, has stopped any collection of data which is not relevant for determining the suitability of the candidate. Distress and agony due to unauthorized disclosure, we know, defamation and all. If your data is disclosed, you feel bad. It's nothing great, we know, but in the digital world, it's much easier to do that. Annoyance, nuisance calls, messages, SMSs, unsolicited calls, which are becoming a pain for us. Financial impact because of loss of credit card information and things like that. So I'll quickly jump to just to conclude my just the bullet points I'm showing, some of the challenges, and I've consumed a lot of time. I have to give the panel the questions now. Some of the challenges are consequence of automated decision making due to machine learning and artificial intelligence. In the borderless cyber world, which law applies? Where is my data residing? Who is going to delete data from a cloud? Where is the cloud residing? Singapore or Ireland? All these questions remain to be answered. Does the organization processing know that the consent is given and what kind of privacy notice was there? Will we use de-identification techniques and will they help at all? So these are some of the things which are newer things in the context of IoT and data science and big data, which we'll dwell in the next couple of minutes. So I'll now start the question session. To you, how do you see privacy regulations impacting the whole stuff that we're talking about, big data, IoT, data science, all those things, and in the innovation and technology? How do you balance these, and what the industry should do or doing to see that both are preserved? We cannot stop innovating because of privacy issues, obviously. So we cannot be paranoid, but at the same time, the progress has to be made. But how do we keep the interests of data subjects, even if there is no law? Like for example, in India, Section 43 IT Act may not apply to your kind of industry, e-commerce or social networking. But what are your views on how we are doing?
See, when we talk about the big data, not everything is personal, right? Am I audible?
Not sure.
Yeah.
Audible. Okay.
So when we are talking about big data, I'm not going into the basics, okay? Not everything is personal. There is a lot of impersonal data is there. Like we collect data with respect to weather. We collect the data from satellites, images and other things. Whatever data is collected for social, I mean, innovation in the area of science, healthcare, weather. I think, I mean, to take better judgments with respect to weather prediction. This is nothing to do with the personal data. I think that still can happen, and then a lot of data is getting collected, processed, and then a lot of meaningful information is derived. That part is happening. The concern is coming from big data analytics perspective from a individual, the processing the individual data. When someone is trying to identify me as a person, say Pramod, and then trying to create a profile, that's where the challenge of privacy is coming into picture. And by rule, legally, no one is authorized to process the data with identifiers. The moment, even after taking the consent, once they collect the data, they need to, take out the personal identifiers and then
de-identify it, you are saying.
Yeah, de-identifiers, and then they need to go with only aggregated data. But most of the time, the big data analytics will help us, again, reconstituting the data and connecting a lot of dots, and then again, they can identify the person. And that's how the profiling is happening. When the data gets changed from one hand to the other hand, it gets changed only in the form of aggregated data, not with the identifiers. But again, the one who's receiving the data, connecting the dots and recreating the map, recreating the identifiers, that's how he is identifying a person. Your services, the optimization of services, the utilities that we are seeing is delivered because of all this personalization, and sometimes it is going into wrong direction. We would have seen a lot of cases like Target, and then in many cases we have seen it's being misused. The law says, I think, we are collecting your data as per your consent, but no one reads whether we have the consent itself is a big thing, in fact, problematic thing. None of us will read through the consent. I don't know how many of you have read the consent and then given it. Anytime have you read the consent, the document that the legal agreement that is that is being posed to you or asked for a consent? None of us will be able to read, because if you take iTunes, I think it is talking for 29. It is of 29 pages. Our friend was saying that Airbnb document is still lengthier one, more than 29 pages or 39 pages. So I don't know how many pages it has. But most of the documents cannot be read through, and then first of all, even if we read through, we will not be able to understand. So based on the consent, these people are trying to collect the data, process the data, and analyze the data for offering various services or creating various services around the data that they are churning out. Few times already Srini has said that we are getting benefited in most of the times. Yes, we are getting benefited. Where to draw the line, that's where the challenge is. When I don't want, they should not be continuing with the processing of data. Wherever they are trying to profile, I think that should discontinue. Governments these days, in fact, I don't know how many of you are aware, China is trying to create social credit score, social credit rating. They say how good you are as a citizen. And your friends are also trying to make friendship with you only after knowing that you have a good rating. The way you look at the credit card company looking at your CIBIL score, they are trying to give you a credit card or a loan. Similarly, in China, people are trying to make friendship, because friendship, if I have a bad score, I can pull your score down because you are a friend of mine. I have a low score, and then so though your score is high, because you are a friend of mine, your score is getting lowered. All these things should not happen. The problem coming up with the transparency. A lot of hiddenness is there. How the score is arrived at is not revealed. Now with the new laws, I think that's getting revealed, and not everywhere it is possible. In EU, the GDPR is trying to protect the subject's interest. There you need to reveal the data. In case if subject asks us, the one who is sharing the data, if they ask, how did you arrive at the score, we need to we are responsible and accountable to explain. Right to explain is the authority given through that regulation, the guidelines. So as long as these things are there, I think the personalization part is also taken care. If we talk further, I mean, like even if you are trying to talk about open systems, I mean, I don't want, when it comes to the advancements in science, healthcare, or I mean, wherever it is trying to help us in enhancing our decision-making powers, it's fine. But when it comes to personalization, profiling, and other things, I think we can deny. I don't know how far the law will allow, but if we start saying that, okay, we will be open only to the open architecture, where we have authority to store the data and encrypt the data when someone wanted to look at the data. So, for example, law enforcement authorities wanted to check your data for some reason, if they know that you are also involved in one of the offenses. Yes, they can come. Now, instead of asking Google, Facebook, Microsoft, asking for data, they need to come to us, ask for the key. That's when I share the key, they can collect the data. So the ownership is with us without knowing, without asking us, they are now not getting the access to the data. If systems are changed and if systems are following up open architecture, yes, that's when it is. Even we can do away with backdoor kits. A lot of backdoor kits are now being used to collect the data as part of the big data analysis. NSA does this, right? The recent incident of Microsoft is nothing but a backdoor kit, right? Microsoft already installed a backdoor. NSA created a tool to get access to that backdoor, and that the tool got hacked, and that's when the problem started. Now the hacker started using the same tool to get into your system, lock your system, ask for money, all these things happened. But initially that was used by NSA. So now we can prevent. If the open architecture comes into picture, then we can say, no, we don't want, the industry will know if there is an, I mean, like, say, for example, mistakes will happen. Even if there is a backdoor, suddenly by mistake, if code is not reviewed, there is a backdoor left, but people will discover because it's an open source. We know where the problem is, and then we can fix it up immediately. When you go with the closed systems, it is not possible because it's totally with them. And law, by what do you call, some compelling them to comply with their, what do you call, instructions, they try to get some, I mean, get these backdoors installed in operating system. RSA has done it, Microsoft has done it. So these people are doing it, not willingly, but they are forced to do that. If they don't comply with the law authorities, they will be sentenced. So that's the reason most of the people will be silent and they try to comply with the law authorities.
So Pramod, sorry to interrupt. So coming to that solution, do you think de-identification techniques like pseudonymization and which is now promoted even by GDPR,
Right.
those techniques are going to be helpful in terms of achieving your business objective, or that won't help?
Definitely. Aggregation always. I mean, if every company sticks to the line of this de-identification, anonymization, it's going to help us. We'll all will be benefited. And I think technology is also improving and rolling out, automating the de-identification process. But the moment it goes to the next hand, people are again connecting the dots and then trying to create identifiers. That's how they are misusing it. The problem is not with the process. By design, even now, without even GDPR is coming into vogue only in 2018. Without that also, there is, by law, collection of identifiers is prohibited. Once you collect, you have to take out those identifiers. That is there in the law. But still, we are seeing a lot of leakages. That is because no one is bothered. They are showing, I mean, to protect themselves, they try to showcase the consent. Now GDPR is trying to address that part by saying not just the consent, I think you are further responsible. When I question, you are supposed to take my grievance and also explain why the score is given, why there is a leakage. All those things have to be taken care by the data processor or data collector.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next question to Santosh. Santosh, this is on social networking sites. You are from a social networking company. So there is two parts. First is there's a belief that social networking companies offer, without naming any particular company, they offer free service, right? Most of us don't pay anything there.
Right.
There's a case also which happened some time ago, 1 year ago, on this. That then why should are they accountable to take care of privacy when by giving data to Facebook and agreeing to the consent, and there's no charge for it? It's understood that the social networking companies using your data as their raw material and profit. So they make profit out of your data. So do we have any right to question them how they use the data and all that? Is it definitely we are questioning, but is that something which is legally we can really go beyond and question the company and all that? We could not so far, and we rely on these privacy consents. And often these policies, as we discussed, are complicated. People don't understand everything, and after some time, the use proliferates like anything. You don't have any control after some time how the organization is going to use. You signed a privacy consent 7 years ago when you joined Facebook or Google. You don't remember that things have changed after that. So in that context, how do you figure out that what is the right thing to do and how do you balance the interest?
Right. So first of
And
all,
even taking example of the Facebook we discussed,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, sure.
where some you can only explain that and
Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, I mean, big data is not just for the companies, it's for consumers as well. Because obviously no company wants to betray any customer, so their main goal is for the customer satisfaction. And at the same time for the consumers, it's a better experience of product experience and service experience. So to make that happen, obviously to make that happen effectively, yes, they have to make use of the data. That's what I believe. And of course, I mean, companies have to respect the individual privacy terms, and that's what's happening these days. If you look at Facebook, right, you look at any third-party API apps who is trying to get connected with Facebook, so they are actually reviewing very thoroughly. So I mean, I've developed my own app, so I've been through that phase where if I ask for a particular permission for the user, let's say email address or phone number or the location data that you're saying, I need to explicitly say why I need this permission from a user. So they actually made that all the approval process very strict. Because that came from the users as well, because in the recent trends, we see a lot of pressure on the Facebook as well in terms of privacy. So that's why they are making, more often changes in their terms as well. So for my end, obviously, there are more pros in terms of giving the data to the Facebook in terms of obviously maintaining the privacy terms. Just to give an example, if you chatting with any, that's a recent feature from Facebook as well. If you're chatting with anybody from your friend network, when you say, let's catch up for dinner today, it immediately shows you start the plan. You can click and then you can set up the timings and you can set up the reminders. I mean, that's what we usually do on a manual basis, right? But it is trying to avoid that manual step and try to automate that. So you see that time is being precious in the fast-paced generation. So we trying to look for automated solution where we trying to utilize our best time. So in that case, obviously people look for personalized solutions. So I think from my perspective is, I mean, slightly different from Pramodji, but where data has to be revealed at, unless you're not misusing them. At the same time, you are, everyone gets benefited out of data, then it makes perfect sense.
Sure. So Uddhav, we talked about this big data and everybody says that it's scary, we lose privacy. So based on your interaction with the people and civil society, you are from that kind of organization. So do you think, do we need to be concerned about this problem that really citizens are victims of big data use cases? Or is it something which is exaggerated by privacy advocates? What is the real picture?
Thank you, Srinivas. So essentially, yes, we do really need to be concerned because the word consent is used very loosely when it comes to the debate in privacy, and most people forget that it's the term informed consent that's really important. And in jurisdictions like India, where our literacy rates, our internet penetration, and the awareness and understanding, far more importantly, of technology is lacking in comparison to the developed world, a lot of the arguments, both regulatory and ethical, that normally apply to privacy simply cannot apply in India. For example, it's very hard to explain to a 12-year-old who has just started school in a rural village how the Google Chromebook that he or she has gotten for free will now track every single thing that he or she is going to do on that computer for the rest of her life in order to sell ads to her so that she can buy some products. So the reason the debate that surrounds the privacy
field in India is currently so varied is largely because, one, I think from a use case perspective, India is the largest population in the world that also has somewhat of an open internet in comparison to China and some other jurisdictions. And a lot of the problems that we are facing are problems that simply haven't been solved anywhere else in the world before. So it's very important to look at, like, I think, three principles: fairness, accountability, and transparency as being the bedrock of any legislation that may come into force. But it's really important to also understand that no matter what laws or regulations or standards we may follow, at the end of it, privacy is essentially an ethical game, and ethics are more often than not implemented with principles. So the data controllers, the data processors, all need to essentially be educated, and capacity has to be built in having a firm understanding of the ethics behind privacy and the principles behind privacy. And as long as they follow them not just to the letter of the law or the regulation, but actually in spirit, things should be fine as long as they are fair, transparent, and accountable.
Okay. Pramod, for you, the question is on IoT now. So we know Internet of Things is penetrated already in various parts of the world. We used to talk about it a few years ago, but unknowingly it is now there in our lives, right? Most of us see devices around. There's a very famous thermostat called Nest. You would have heard about it. It is used extensively in US, and its prices have fallen down like anything. So which it reads about the behavior of people's in the house. Behavior means in terms of what temperature they like, what time they sleep, which room they sleep, with window open or not, and all that stuff, and then decides that how much air has to be cooled, what temperature. So all that setting it does, and when connected to connected cars, it is also, when you are approaching your house, it also knows that when to switch on the AC, so you save the power. It also connects to meteorological department and finds out what is the weather likely to be, and therefore when to switch on the AC or not to switch on the AC, or what is the humidity going to be. So this is the threat vectors coming from in this entire scenario of use cases. Where there can be flaws, where the data can be hacked, it can be the weakest link could be the meteorological department from where it's connecting. So the threats are increasing in this entire IoT world. We don't have any standards. There are standards a little bit on architecture, but not so much on security and privacy. This work is going on in ISO also, I know. But and regulations obviously are far behind, lagging. I think NASSCOM is also doing on this some work on this, I know. But in the absence of all this, how do you think we can balance and ensure that data privacy is taken care of by the industry? And again, you don't rely on something called a privacy consent and leave aside what he mentioned, accountability. We need accountability also, right? How do you bring that?
Yeah. Before starting, I just wanted to, just on a lighter note, how many of you have seen a movie called IT? Pierce Brosnan is the hero, and then it's a hacking incident of a home system, like home automation system. The disgruntled person is an employee of hero's company, and then he's removed from the job. So immediately he goes back and then ensures that entire home automation system is taken into his control, and then he runs the show. And hero does many things, and then he goes to controller to gain the control back, but nothing will happen. But it's a classic case of how the IoT system can be hacked. So just on a lighter note, I just wanted to call out that. And coming to this one, like IoT system is also having it's a device, and Internet of Things is a device, nothing but a device. It uses multiple things. It has a sensor to collect the data, then it passes on to the main systems through a network. So before that, it's like it can be equivalent to a mobile device as well. In most of the cases, they are using Android also. OS is an Android. It's a small chip having an embedded OS that has to be hardened first. In these three areas, if you can control, I think things can come under. Since it was already mentioned that there is no regulatory guidelines on IoT design, and there is no standard architecture also. It's just evolving. Now everything is dependent on self-restraint. How we are building the systems. The one who is developing has to have a self-restraint, and then based on the best practices, they have to develop this application. The device has to be hardened first, so that it is not giving up access. It's not giving access to any kind of another. Even in an enterprise, in spite of having all the firewalls, multiple layers are there in the enterprise. In spite of that, we see enterprise getting hacked. The entry point is a home user. So I take the laptop to my place and then I browse a site from where I just download some Trojan or backdoor. I take it to our company, then I start working in the company, then it gets propagated from there. That's the loose, most of the attacks are created from inside. So having such a standard, robust system also is getting hijacked. Coming to IoTs, I think there is no control from outside. There is no standard firewall setup. There is no, continuous monitoring. We don't monitor, right? Once the IoT is set up, we continuously, there is no system to monitor it. There is no system stating that, hey, I got hacked. System also doesn't warn you. So because of these lapses, I think now only the designer, the developer of the app or the Internet of Things have to take all the precautions. The OS has to be hardened. As I said, after collecting the data, it is sending the data over the internet, and now it is sending in clear text. Now they have to encapsulate it. Most of the case, encapsulation is happening, but they look at the performance and trying to shy away from encapsulation, encryption and decryption. They can go with the lightweight model to, balance it out, encapsulation versus performance. And coming to the data collection, I think again, there we need to take a lot of controls. When it comes to collecting data from home appliances, smart homes, and then in few areas, I think data can be stored in locally only, instead of again sending back. Because why should the utilities guy should know through the meter whether I am monitoring or watching a TV or which show I am doing, when I am going to bed. All those things need not be known to the utilities guy. Rather, the data can be stored locally, and then as I said previously, when data is stored, I should apply my keys to protect the data so that no one is misusing it. All these things can be brought in, provided there are some current systems will allow certain things, current systems are not allowing certain things. Where whatever is not allowed, I think we have to bring those changes. Like personal control on the data stored is not available. That we can demand and then get those changes accommodated. That's about the first question, and then you asked multiple questions. I don't remember it.
Yeah, so it is about how we balance basically. I think you pretty much answered. So just to add to that, if you know this, there's many companies actually developed the software in US, and Federal Trade Corporation fined them. So what they did is they exploited the accelerometer, or not remembering exactly, accelerometer or some device inside mobile phone to listen to your TV viewing habits. And so once you install that app, it works without your making it active or whatever, and it records your television habits, and then the company will send you what kind of habits you have, and therefore why don't you view this channel. And imagine when there's a family of 6 people or 5 people living, and one of them is watching certain types of things, and something pops up saying you watch this and why don't you buy this, what will happen? So in a shared facility like television or mobile is individual, television is shared, car may be shared. So where do you draw the line? What pseudonymity we are talking about there? So it's very difficult to use big data in such scenarios. The organization which uses big data probably do not understand how it's going to impact the individual. So we have not understood the dimension, and always innovation will be ahead of technology, and ahead of law obviously. But somewhere the accountability has to be brought into organizations, that they need to think holistically, and that's where GDPR also is promoting privacy by design and data privacy. So data privacy, I would request all of you, urge you to see that this is very important field where you need to understand, empathize with the user, the individual in mind, and then work towards it. It is not some 27,000 or some checklist which you fill and say that these are elements are addressed, then consent is taken, it's closed. So that requires you to completely visualize the life cycle of data, what can happen, who is there in the family, who sits in the car, what will happen with this company that I am giving, what this company can do. All this entire picture you have to have, which is often difficult to have. That's where the government has to come and say accountability. So every stakeholder in the ecosystem has to be made accountable. In the US, we have an organization called FTC, Federal Trade Corporation. For all commercial organizations, that's what penalizes people who don't follow the rule, on privacy.
EF tries to restrict even misuse.
Yeah. So right, but here we have not gone to because the awareness of data privacy, people are saying what is privacy? It is alien to India. Right. My worry is that. So do you think this is alien to you? Tomorrow, if your TV channel starts showing that you are watching this kind of program, and your father and mother sitting next to you or whatever, grandfather, would you like that and say that I don't care privacy? This is what is privacy. So let us be aware what privacy is. It is not about hiding information or hiding into a room and not showing my face. That is not privacy. Somewhere somebody is exaggerating, they overly exaggerating because of some other agenda. Sorry.
I just wanted to say one thing. TV itself is doing. In fact, TV is monitoring us. We are not watching TV. TV is watching us now. That's the other way around. And even our wallet is controlling most of the. Wallet also can be embedded with a chip, and then it can track what we are
There are
doing.
many cases, right? Today,
So-
plenty of threat.
40,000, I think 40 billion devices are going to be there by end of 2020. So that much of data, huge data is being
And
collected.
Pramod, the fact is that the world, whenever you see that economics is what drives everything.
Right.
What is appreciated by consumers, what sells will sell. We all know that nothing can stop the driving force of economics. So it is just better to align with that and see what can be done best to not stop them, but regulate and see that we move along with that and make sure that the organizations are accountable, they understand the various dimensions. So none of us can stop any of these things. We all get benefited, but where to draw the line, where to balance is our role. That's all our role should be. Even government should not interfere and say that this cannot be done, that cannot be, has to be stopped. It has to be a balance where there has to be probably a sector-specific bodies, a telecom, mobile phone apps. We are trying something like that in ISO. We did create working groups, but the pace at which it's moving is very slow.
Actually, people believe that the utilities are the services that we ask for is inversely proportional to the data privacy. That's what we believe, but it is not so. We can demand data privacy as well as the services. Provided the systems are changed, architecture is changed, I think we can demand for that.
Right. So Santosh, next question is to you. In the light of the discussion that is going on in Supreme Court, one of the things that came up interesting was that privacy is not a fundamental right, or it should not be a fundamental right. It cannot be an absolute right. You would have heard the judgment, right? It's still in the interim situation, but some of them are speaking that it cannot be absolute, it cannot be fundamental, because one of the reasons given was that if something is fundamental and absolute, then you cannot have a contract called privacy consent or privacy notice, which defies the fundamental right. There cannot be anything which supersedes the fundamental right. So no organization like Facebook or any can say that because you gave me data and you signed this consent, therefore I don't care whether privacy is what it is. I do what I want to do with the data, which is written in the notice. So that is the kind of judgment we are going to. And suppose, I don't know whether it will be considered as absolute and fundamental, but if does, then it's a big threat for entire big data, social networking, all that. So what do you think will be the threat and how will you balance?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So absolutely, I too don't support that decision. Obviously, for being, reason being, there are so many data-centric solutions. If you see, I mean, that's part of our life. Many apps that we use are data-centric. Like, because when you download an app for free, don't think that you're not paying anything. You're paying by data of use indirectly. I suppose. Say an example of smart keywords or Grammarly for that case, or let's say Tinder, right? It's a very good use case where Tinder when you sign up, you're trying to connect your Facebook with your profile. So without a Facebook connection, Tinder has nothing to do with that. So it doesn't work at all. So it tries to get your interest, your location, your preferences, and then tries to recommend you the right people. While obviously signing up with Tinder, you might have a concern that why I'm giving the data, but within 5 minutes, if you see a match and that actually liked by you, then you see the value there. I mean, the cost is being justified. So obviously there are so many such data-centric solutions are already part of our life. So if that is going to be the judgment, I would definitely say that will affect a lot of companies as well.
Well, I think it will not come that way. I'm sure we all know that business has to thrive, so it will be a balance. I was just coming to know from which angle will you handle. So I think important thing for organizations are to bring that accountability dimension, what we spoke about time and again. Even GDPR is talking about much greater emphasis on that, because if you remember GDPR, one of the things is its strengthened is consent. The consent has to be explicit. It's a very big challenge to make it explicit. So in many scenarios, consents are today not explicit. Fair, explicit, legitimate, there are 5-6 principles if you read. It's much easier said than done, very difficult to implement if you want to do business out of it. If it's about not making money out of data, it's easy to comply. If not, it's a challenge. So we'll have to wait and see. Last question to Udbhav before we wrap up and give the chance to audience. We have enough. I think we lost enough time in the PPT thing. Udbhav, this is about AI and ML. So we see increasing adoption of AI and ML, not just in Silicon Valley, but it's impacting and coming everywhere in our lives. I think somebody mentioned that in India, somebody mentioned a few weeks ago that they want to not allow AI and ML to come into India. I think AI is
Nitin Gadkari.
right? Yeah. So we don't know, it's all statements at this stage. But we know that it will pervade into our lives. And before I tell you the question about how is this going to impact our lives, both from ethics as well as privacy perspective, I also want to mention about this thing called automated decision making, which we touched upon a while ago in Europe. There's one of the requirements of GDPR, which used to be there previously also, is called automated decision making and profiling. Both are linked. Profiling is when you profile people, we all know. So we know about what you do, when you come, when you go home, what you sleep, all that stuff is called profiling. Creating such a database itself is a problem. But however, if you have legitimate reasons, you can create. But then using those databases and taking decisions using algorithms without human being is a problem. So whenever there is any decision which is purely taken by machines and computers, needs to be followed by a human intervention. That is what the law says clearly, and that's not easy to implement. Many threat cases are there in this, where like credit card, from credit card thing to insurance, and many other cases where I was giving an example of something called UEBA. Have you heard about that? Some of your security guys, user and entity behavioral analysis. Some of you know this? User and entity behavioral analysis. So this is actually a component of SIM and DLP, which studies people what is their behavior, and any abnormality in the behavior of you where you're logging from, etc. Then it flashes. It gives a higher risk rating for the SIM guys to look at and investigate the incident faster before the damage is done. Today it happens to some extent, like suppose I go to Hong Kong and log into my Google account, it says that are you Srinivas, because we see that you are not in your current location. That's just an example. So there are many the cases it draws, and such things are okay when it comes to security, to some extent where it is balancing security versus privacy, but it can go beyond when it comes to insurance or credit card and all that. So in the light of that, I see that there is a good scope that AI and ML can get into trouble with data privacy laws coming into picture. What's your view?
Yeah, no, they definitely can. And the biggest reason for that is, I mean, everybody bandies about the phrase that data is the new oil, but it's actually a pretty scary phrase to use because, I mean, if you are equating the sum of experiences and expressions of like an entire population to something that you can commodify like oil, you're automatically making a lot of presumptions about what you can do with it, what you shouldn't do with it, and how it can be traded and dealt with. And that's pretty much the way the internet revolution over the past at least 15 to 16 years has really gone about. But so far, it's mostly been about your data being used to target you, or your data being used to serve you ads, or your data being used to like separate you from the crowd. But what machine learning and artificial intelligence does is it actually takes it up a notch and it makes decisions that are made on your behalf based on this data. And that's scary at a whole other level because now what is happening is not only will you just see an ad, but whether an alarm will ring or not, or in the example that you gave, whether when the AC will turn on or not, will now be dependent on this data collected from maybe 15 or 16 different sources. And that makes it a lot more complicated to enforce privacy because while you can enforce privacy at the point at which the data is being collected, and you can enforce it even maybe in the process in which the decision is being made, it's an entirely different ballgame to make sure that artificial intelligence doesn't arrive to the same conclusions that from alternative proxy factors that it shouldn't have arrived at if you had privacy rights. For example, you gave the example of credit scoring. And in America, since the 1960s, ever since they started using computers for this, if you do credit rating, there is an audit that the government has to conduct of your credit rating system to make sure that you don't discriminate on a set of factors, and one of them includes race. And when they started doing these audits for systems that were using machine learning, they realized that even though the machine learning software, when it received the data did not have race. When it actually performed the analysis on the basis of income group, location, the place where your house is located, which school you went to, whether you're educated or not, the decisions were remarkably similar to actually discriminating on the basis of race. So things that aren't banned right now because they are private and they are yours, computers have the ability to analyze and arrive at the conclusions that you would arrive at if you were actually discriminating against them, and that actually takes it a little above privacy and makes it discrimination. And this, especially considering in America, judgments, like the fines you have to pay in judgments in some courts are now being calculated by artificial intelligence. There's predictive policing happening, that in which police people are being deployed in New York and Chicago in districts where crime rates are going to be higher, not according to statistics, but according to a machine learning. Plantier is a company that does this a lot.
Yeah, we
So-
all saw the movie called Minority Report. So please see that. It's a very old movie, but all those things are coming true.
Yeah, it's also a story by Robert Heinlein. So I mean, you should also read it. And it's a wonder that it was written in the 1960s. But essentially, the solution to this is again going back. I mean, probably the biggest initiative in the world that's working in this is the FAT-ML group, which is the Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency group in machine learning, that is attempting to solve some of these really big problems and as to how this, because I mean, I think everyone knows that regardless of what the highways minister says or not, artificial intelligence is going to be a part of our life. And a lot of decisions around us are already being made on the basis of artificial intelligence. So this is more about ensuring those decisions don't end up causing more harm than good, and creating a core set of fenced off principles or areas that definitely do not get affected with artificial intelligence. And that's something that requires a lot of debate. I think the automated decision making components of the GDPR are among the first steps that say, for example, just saying human intervention is not really fixing the problem, because clearly AI is now doing things where it's almost going to be impossible to have a human intervene every single time the decision is made. I
No, the
think
intervention could be as simple as before the thermostat starts my AC, it should check with me.
exactly.
It could be that kind of thing, you know. Before the garage door opens because there's a courier fellow came, it rechecks, are you sure? There's a second layer of checking, we call it independent layer, which is not dependent on this IoT segment, to cross check what, when it comes to safety, hazard, crime, murder, the things can impact our life. There should be independent mechanism to check. You cannot
Exactly.
rely on automated
Yes,
individual.
but
I
for
mean,
example,
algorithms.
in America, if you were to deploy police in, say, Harlem, because there's a higher black population in Harlem,
Yeah,
and
New York.
the human beings simply aren't going to have the processing power or the data available to be able to see whether the decision that has been arrived at by the algorithm is a correct one. It's also much harder, and that's sort of the point of deep learning and neural networks, that you can't replicate the results. Like the algorithm cannot explain why it will come to a result because of the very nature of neural networks. And things like that are very, very problematic, because I mean, now not only are you making decisions, but you also cannot completely explain how that decision was arrived at. Right? Because it all depends on which data set you train it with, in which context it's being used, how it learns from its own mistakes, etc. So, I mean, to truly answer your question, I think the only thing I've done is really laid out the field. It's a question that I think some of the biggest and smartest minds in the world are still grappling with, and I think the solution is many years in the making. But I mean, it's definitely the next big challenge in the scope of privacy, where you have to sit and now think, how can we look at individuals as more than just data subjects, but as human beings, and why we should make computing adjust to that instead of making human beings adjust to computing. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all. I think we should now give time for audience questions. We have some time left for that? Yeah, we can take 2 questions. 2 questions? Okay, sure.
Everybody does.
Uddhav, can you pass?
If the 2 parts to this, one is if that employee is a EU citizen. The organization is in India hiring a EU citizen. Data is collected, personally identifiable data, as part of its normal thing, right? What is the rule on that? The second part is, forget about EU in general, does it come under privacy? Because he'll use that data a lot for a lot of decisions. You may be politically correct and say don't discriminate. Everybody has to take decisions based on their beliefs. If he believes that a person who belongs to a particular profile is a good performer, okay, all the PE funds end up funding only IIT, IIM guys. Okay, that's profiling, discriminatory. That's what happens. No? How do you explain that?
Yeah. So, shall I take the question? So, the first part is you are saying a company is based in India, but it has employees, maybe it has a branch in Europe and therefore it recruits some employees from Europe, correct? And that data comes to India.
You hire a guy
From Europe and he is in India.
Yeah.
Then there is no European law applying there.
EU citizen.
No, but EU citizen, but if somebody migrates to India, like I go to,
You hire him as a consultant.
okay. So that, yeah, in that case, we need to check because I think it does apply, but how it will apply, we still have to see, because it primarily says companies which are here and processing data of European citizens, is their GDPR applies. So if like I go to Europe or I go to America, completely the American law applies. I cannot bring my Indian law and say that the America has to respect my Indian law there just because I am sitting for 10 days in America. So like that, the European citizen who is staying here has to forego his European things and come to the. My belief is that anybody wants to add, you can add. So second part I'll quickly address and then give it to. The second part is more to do privacy. How does it apply when your employer is collecting data, right? Yeah. So one part is, yeah. So when data is collected by organizations from employees particularly, it's a contractual. So one of the, if you see that the principles of data collection, it has to have a legal basis, and one of the legal basis permitted is contract. So employee is actually in a contract with employer. So in that form, employer can take a lot of data about which is essential for processing without even consent. Privacy notice is enough. Beyond that, or the same data used for some other purpose, could be for some gym activity or things which are recreational activities or some selling some products, they cannot do that. So the boundary starts there. So whatever has been collected, for example, if you take education qualification, it's collected for assessing your suitability for the job. That's where it stops. It can't go beyond that. So all that thing you're mentioning, you also went into this area about you said that certain colleges are preferred, IITs, and so that is perfectly normal. You ask information about a person, his education background and experience. You say that which organization, what kind of organization, and then decide whether to take him or her or not. So that particular thing is not breaching privacy because all that information is legitimate. You have shared because we ask and it is required to assess your suitability, right? Because we have to compare where you stand in the educational institution paradigm. Where the problem starts is we collect information about you which is not related to your suitability of the job, and which is causes a bias and opinion in my mind about you, because generally we assume that people from this background or this religion may not be capable, as you mentioned about people from Harlem may not require credit card, or they may be defaulters in credit card and things like that. So you form opinions, and therefore those opinions will bias your decision, and hence that any data which makes that opinion is not to be collected. The example of this one was an example. In many other cases, we don't allow to collect information because of that reason.
I know many banks don't give credit cards to film personalities, lawyers, policemen, or if you live in certain parts of the city.
Yeah, that's what is that.
Even without analytics, I think from the beginning, Hyderabad old city doesn't get credit cards.
Yeah, that was being politically correct by not mentioning it.
And coming to your point, the data which is not given by, see, if company is trying to analyze the data which is not given by employee, we don't give the statistics like what is my moods and other things, right? But if employer is trying to collect this data based on which he is trying to take, that is the data. Which your qualification, your skill set, your experience, all is given by you. This is legal, let's do it.
Anybody wants to add anything which I mentioned? Jurisdiction.
Hello. Yeah, sorry. So, I mean, normally the question of what kind of law applies to the person of a country, there are different kinds of jurisdiction. There's territorial jurisdiction, which means as long as a person is present in the territory of the state, you have to comply with the laws of the state, which means that if you go to Europe and you're there for a day and you open, say, an account in a local cash card that you're going to use only for those 10 days, you will still be protected by the GDPR because you're present within EU territory and the law should apply to you. But if you come back, then it will obviously not continue to applying to you, and it won't apply to you because you're not present in the jurisdiction anymore. What some countries do is they have universal jurisdiction, so they say that if things are done against my citizens anywhere in the world, then we will still sue you. But that's something that is really, really hard to do because the entity has to submit to the jurisdiction of the courts, which means the Indian company has to listen to a European court saying, come to Europe and listen to why you violated our laws against this person, which is something which companies normally don't do unless they have an actual obligation to do. And most countries also don't make like laws of privacy apply universally. Things like torture and really high-level human right violations are the laws that normally apply universally, that I can sue you for in any court in the world, in any country. Like America can sue you for torturing me in China, for example. I mean, that's what they can claim, and that's how laws work. But such laws, privacy laws normally don't extend to such a wide extent.
So most likely it won't apply, I think.
Yeah.
We can debate more, but also these all depend on the treaties that we sign between countries, right? Like MLAT, which we have. Yeah. If we don't have treaties, and those treaties are also dysfunctional mostly. Yeah. What's the other question? We had few more questions.
No, can we take this offline because they wanted to open this hall.
Okay.
Already we have finished.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
We can discuss during tea time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Srinivas, and thank you so much, other panelists.
Thank you.
Just a minute. I request Srinivas to give away the token of appreciation to our other panelists today.
Sure.
Promote.
Sorry.
I request Arnav to give away the token of appreciation to Srinivas.
Very good question. We have to be in touch. Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sure.